Welcome to UX Banter Season 7, where design leaders, innovators, and changemakers share their stories, insights, and passion for human centered experiences. This season, we are exploring AI driven design, inclusive UX, enterprise strategy, and the evolving role of designers in a rapidly changing world. I'm your host, Dushyant Kanungo. This podcast is presented by Galaxy UX Studio and powered by Galaxy Weblinks, an Inc. 5000 company. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the UX Banter podcast. Our guest today is a designer, author, and speaker who is deeply focused on the human side of design. He spent years exploring how culture, values, and craft shape the way we design products and teams. And he's known for helping designers think beyond tools and trends to create more meaningful work. He's also the author of Creative Culture and In Fulfillment, The Designer's Journey, and a frequent speaker at global design conferences. Joining us today is the founder of Anomaly by Design, Justin Dauer. Welcome, Justin, to the show.
Hey, Dushyant, great to be here.
So it's bad weather time in the entire of the USA, and you are in the pallbearer of the weather when it comes to Chicago, the city that you are living in. How is it going? How are things?
Yeah, I won't deny that for a second. It's quite frigid here. We're very much in the thick of it. We have a few more months to go, so I will just grin and bear it and sip my nice warm coffee. But yeah, it's frosty. It's frosty here for sure.
Absolutely wonderful weather conditions whenever it comes to US. You get to experience everything from coast to coast. And it is the fun part of traveling and exploring. And if I'm remembering it right, you're not from Chicago, are you?
No, I am. Yeah, it's always the most boring origin story. I'm from the south side of Chicago, and I moved to North Chicago.
No, so let's talking about the origin stories. What was the pivot? What was the journey when you started, when you decided, no, I want to be a professional designer, to setting up your own studio? What the story was like?
So, design for me is as much as it is a profession and something that puts food on the table. I not to sound faux profound, but I consider it a calling as well. I've been invested and passionate about design ever since high school when I was in a study hall class and they had some of the design class artwork in the background, some graphic design pieces for album covers. And I asked the teacher who was running the study hall, what are those? And she told me what graphic design was. And I was probably 16 at that point. And I'm like, this is for me. I can apply strategic thinking plus the arts together to make something that affects people. And I just thought that was magic. So I've been invested in design, for a long time. I'm a lot older than 16 now. So, I put a portfolio together. I went to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. I got my degree in visual communications. And I graduated at a time, when you would tell your mom or your dad you're a web designer and they had no idea what the heck you were talking about. So, yeah, it's been a career of working my way up from the absolute bottom of design. My first design role, I lived in the East Coast in the United States for a couple of years. My first design role was in this small town called Portland, Maine. Well, I guess it's not that small. And I was a web designer for an internet magazine. I made $18,500 a year. I lived in an apartment that had fleas, and I could barely afford food, but I knew design is what I wanted to do. And I just was passionate about learning and growing and evolving and teaching myself. I had taught myself how to code when I was in art school, but I really wanted to understand the implications of my design decisions. So I got more invested in coding and design and pixel art and all these different ways of putting my design and critical thinking beyond what my tools could provide, if you will.
So didn't you say that you went to a music class that led to a website and it all started there?
Yeah, I took a music class, a few music classes when I was in art school. And one of the things I did for a project was I built a very small website. I forget what composer I built it for, but I brought the class up to the computer lab and I installed the website locally, just the HTML directory on each computer's desktop. And they were able to click on the index.html file, load the website, click through a few pages. Some of the buttons had hover effects on them. And this is the rudimentary raw internet at this point. It was like 1996.
Mhm.
And it just like melted people's brains that they were viewing a website on their computer. It was something I built. And just seeing people's engagement and enthusiasm about a little website I built, I was like, this is pretty cool. I think I could do something with this.
Wow. So when you are working with now in the agency environment, do you have you envisioned the work the same way as you are doing it right now, or is it a lot different and matured, but with a different perspective and aspects of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a phenomenal question that some of the initial fascination with the web and design as it applies to the digital landscape is absolutely there, in that I'm very engaged with the human experience and the way folks interact with what we/I build and create. But at the same time, there's so much more we have to be cognizant of now. I mean, obviously, there's the web and bandwidth and viewports and research and obviously AI now. So I appreciate, having 25 years of experience at this point to help me approach things with a critical lens and pausing with intent and slowing down and taking, a view of nuance and pause to any given tooling that might come out at a certain point. So that's one thing as designers I think we're eternally challenged with, and I laugh when I say this, cursed with, is things are evolving week over week. It's new tools, it's new constraints, it's new things to be cognizant of, and it's energizing, but it's also, it takes a lot of
Very
energy.
exhausting. Yeah.
Very
Um,
exhausting, yes.
Okay, before we move on to the exhausting part, we will talk about it in detail. I want to know that music class, and I like your tattoos on your hand. So a big music enthusiast?
Well, these are my tattoos primarily are concert posters from Joseph Mueller Brockman from the late 1950s.
Hmm.
The posters that he had done for the orchestra, deconstructing music, so yeah, I mean these happen to be music focused. Music is certainly a part of my life. That music class, boy, I think I'd taken, yeah, two or three iterations of that. But it's funny. I do a lot of writing. I do a lot of design. When I design, I need music. When I write, I need absolute silence. I don't know why. I don't know why that is. Like music and design just go hand in hand to me. Writing must use a different part of my brain. I need pin drop silence for that. So I don't know what that says. Take that for what it is.
Yeah, it's just the creative process, the way that you are looking at things. I'm sure that Mozart has his own sense of quirks when he was composing. With a lot of creatives and the random stories that we get to hear that they did this to process the idea. All right.
Right.
So, coffee fan?
Huge coffee fan. Yeah, I've worked with, I mean, the clients with my agency. I'm passionate about collecting denim. I've had a denim client, craft furniture. I have a craft furniture client. I've worked in gaming. If I can get a coffee client, I think I would retire, because then I've covered the gamut of everything I like to work with.
Wow. Well, that's a good tangent to hold on to. What about games? Do you have baseball or NBA?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in Chicago, so I mean that's in your blood. I'm from the South Side, so there's a huge like Sox versus Cubs kind of thing that goes on. But the Bears just went far in the playoffs. We have the hockey, the Blackhawks, obviously the Bulls and Jordan. So sports, like even as like an art student, like I can talk sports with somebody if I was in a bar or something at the drop of a hat. I mean, it's just how it is as a Chicagoan. So yeah, sports is in my DNA for sure.
Hmm. Well, I'm in India and Indian. I lived in England for many years, but never could get hold of football. So
Mm.
me, it remains cricket, cricket, and only cricket, the one sport that we talk about. The faster version, not the boring versions that people generally
Right,
imagine with white dresses and no
right.
noise. In India, the IPL is just a noisy season that we have. All right, your favorite holiday destinations?
Yeah, I was actually just in Mexico over Christmas, Mazatlan, Cabo, and I mean that'll come top of mind because it was perfect, not a cloud in the sky, 85 degrees Fahrenheit over Christmas, which is obviously I came back to Chicago weather, so I'm particularly fond of it. But my favorite place in the world is probably Florence, Italy. I was there for my honeymoon. Michelangelo is my favorite artist of all time. So just being able to look in any given direction and see artwork that you've only studied like right in your face just is something that was transcendent for me. So I would love to go back.
Italy has always been one of the hot destinations when you want to learn, or if you know anything about art history. Europe is the place, and then Italy holds the cards because of the survivalist versions of art that you can actually see there. And second, I think, is Japan, because I always
Mm.
talk to designers and they say, oh, the aesthetics, you should go and check out. And it is on my bucket list. And I hope someday that should happen. But you are right. So, any design book that you can recommend for us?
Design book. That's I'll probably say go back to Joseph Mueller Brockman, Raster System about grid systems. That's the alt. I've given that to design students I've mentored. I have it on my bookshelf right here. I don't think you can do any worse than Joseph Mueller Brockman talking about design and grid systems and critical thinking in that capacity. So I'll go old school and say Grid Systems, Raster System by Joseph Mueller Brockman.
Good advice. And let's talk about your own books. You have written two, and what are they about? I'm really interested to know, and I would definitely would like to read them right after this podcast. I'm going to order and just check out your work. But for our listeners
Thank you.
or viewers, can we talk about those?
Yeah, certainly. I appreciate you asking. So I've written two books. The first one has two editions, and the title changed between editions, so it's a little confusing. First book, Cultivating a Creative Culture, and that had a second edition called Creative Culture, Human-Centered Interaction, Design, and Inspiration. And then the second book is called In Fulfillment, The Designer's Journey. And I suppose if I was going to differentiate the two, the first is very much written at a more macro lens about finding an environment that is our best fit to do our best work. And it's written from, both the perspective of someone who is seeking to find that environment and also those who are the ones who are the curators of that environment. So it's for people who are seeking to engage and for those who have the privilege of providing, if you will. So I'm proud of that, the fact of that dual perspective in that book. Cultivating a Creative Culture was born from an Alista Part article called Resetting Agency Culture. And it was very much written from the lens of just design in the US. And when that piece was published, the feedback I received from people, transmedia, newspaper, film, radio, television, it kind of told me this is bigger than what I had originally intended for that article. So I put it together as a book proposal for a book apart. I wrote the first few chapters with a book apart. We ultimately decided to go our separate ways. So I brought it in-house, I guess I'll say, and I self-published, which allowed me to take full control of the brand and the creative presentation. So I worked with I had a concept for art direction on that. I worked with a very talented illustrator to bring that to life. And the book was a strong commercial success. I was very proud of that. And I still reference a lot of that material today about finding our best fit, about leveraging human-centered thinking, both in our output as well as the way we treat one another in the office and values over words. And then In Fulfillment, The Designer's Journey was more of a critical success, I would suppose. It was featured in ComArts. It won an Independent Press Award for the careers category. And that is much more about designers doing their best work and understanding the best means by which their work can connect with them and their work can connect with those who are going to engage with it. So a lot of the thinking and the writing I do today is coming through the lens of that book.
This has become essential that the design leaders who have actually worked in the industry and not just academia to come out and tell the stories, because most of the AI slop writing, I would say, has overtaken what you actually read. You can actually read an article and say, wait a second, this is not something new.
Mm.
This is not ideation. This is just building on to the information which is out there. And that is when the stories, like you mentioned, that we are out there to tell becomes important. And so, two questions here. One is, it's about the process and the creative work and the headspace that it requires when you're writing. I've written two books. I did a lot of blogging back in the day, and I do write blog articles. I'm working on another book, but that is still a long way to finish. But then that comes a challenge that you have to stop midway and say, wait a second, while concentrating on this, I have other commitments and opportunities that I'm missing right now. And that is a block that every creative person is going to face, that how do you prioritize? Because your day job is your day job. Writing his book is another thing altogether. Then how did you manage about it?
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing your experience in that capacity. And I have certainly common threads with what you stated, because unless you're sequestering yourself on like a lakefront cabin and have complete silence and no commitments, both, I mean, you're a book writing is going to take a long time. So both my books effectively took me 3 years just in the writing side of things. And that's because COVID happened and the pandemic happened when I was writing my second book. With my first book, I had my second born as I was writing my book. And just massive like life and environment shifting things happened, which gave me, if I was going to look at in a healthy capacity, it gave me a positive pause where I can put the material aside. I can go deal with what I have to, and I can come back and be like, maybe that's not the right framing. So the fact that I wasn't cranking through it and I didn't have, AI assistance, with the material. I mean, this is what makes our unique experience and our perspective and our storytelling valuable, because it's our framing. It's not a computer scraping millions of other articles on the internet and kind of giving you an aggregation of that. So I appreciate your point on that immensely. But the mentor of mine and a good friend told me once said that writing is the most solitary experience in the world. I greatly feel that writing is a very lonely experience. It's a very challenging experience. And then when you work with an editor and you give something to the editor you're really proud of, and you get it back and it's just like red lines through everything. And it's if you don't leverage your humility when you're authoring, I think it's going to be a very fruitless experience.
The feedback that I was going through, which actually, had me irritated to the hilt, was the title should have a couple of lines description after it. We have this font sizing, this H1, H2 hierarchy. I said it doesn't matter, because it's just one single thing that I'm written, and the breaking it down, and then yes, there are breakpoints and everything is happening, but you see that we have the standards that we need to set. Standard wise, I'm fine. You're asking me to format it. Can't you just put a junior who can just do the formatting about the bullet points and sub bullet points and
I
and
hear you.
that angers me like to the core, that I've done this exercise. I took like 2 years or 1.5 years to complete it, and for the last 3 months we are fighting over formatting. And that too when I'm a designer. So yeah, but the second part of it that you talked about, self-publishing,
Yes.
it's a hard decision, but do you recommend, or do you think that this is something that requires additional efforts, and the push that drives you, that no, I want my story to be heard, I want this book to be out there? And I know this is not a UX conversation per se, but it's a leadership conversation on the same lines, that you went through the hoops and to do something that is beneficial, that is commercially successful, that makes sure that you are a thought leader in the industry and domain. So how did it happen?
Yeah, I mean that's another phenomenal question, because it's something very near and dear to me. I think I could offer some value on the response. It's really a trade-off of where you want to invest your energy. So when I wrote the first 3 chapters of my first book with a book apart, which has since stopped being a publisher, was the design publishing house. They wrote the authoritative thought leadership books. They had the brand, they had, the consistent design throughout it, a consistent tone of voice. And when we decided to part ways, and it was very amicable, I was devastated, because I felt like I lost that brand pushing my material forward. What I gained was, as a designer, being able to retake control of my brand and art direct the piece and find my own editor and find my own publicist in that capacity. And to me, as a designer, I found it incredibly challenging, but impossibly rewarding. And I say that with the most positive spin on it, because I've said this as well. I find the best part of writing a book is designing it, because the writing to me, I have it in my head and I love to write and I think I'm okay at it. When I'm able to design it and art direct it and tell a story visually that is cohesive as a wrapper, is interwoven in the material, is comes through in the typographic treatment and the way it's presented, it feels. I struggle to even articulate how good it feels to have it as a cohesive piece of my visual presentment and my content presentment together. And, in a field of largely impermanence that we work in as designers, because products update, there's new releases, websites refresh, to be able to like physically, take my book and hand it to somebody and they can hold this thing and it stands the test of time. That feels impossibly good, to have something tangible that is crafted and the material is timeless. It's not tied to any given tool. It's not tied to something that's going to be obsolete in a week. The material and the thought process and the values and actions and the actionable material is timeless. So is it a ton of work to self-publish? Absolutely. I won't sugarcoat that at all. There's mental expense, there's financial expense, but to be able to own it and work with an editor to provide third-person perspective and ultimately have something that you've created in totality, there's a sense of reward that I can't find an equal to.
Great story, and definitely a lot of us should take inspiration. And if anybody is sitting on a book, I recommend that you should give it a shot. If you can just mark it like 30 minutes twice a week on your calendar, that should be good enough to get you started. Start with the
Well
structure,
said.
just create the outline and start filling in the blanks. And the idea will flow, because once you know where is the starting point, when is the finish line, and it is just the story in the middle. And that is something of a book that I'm working on, about telling you stories about UX design from the trenches, as in
Mm.
not just before, after, the mess in the middle is what is going to happen. My first book, again, it was a publisher who came to me, it was Pack Publishing. And they wanted me to write something on HTML5 and CSS3, which is since very dated now. I wrote it and they published it in 2013, I think. So since it was a very technical oriented, it was almost a checklist of items that you need to do. That how do you move to HTML5 if you have a web?
Mm.
It was a manual. But then second time I was contacted by the BPB publication, which are a big house in India for tech books. And they said that we want a book that is abandoned, structured by somebody who is not working on it. And here is the outline that we wish to expand on. So I said, let me have a look. I thought it was a good idea, and I added my own flavors to it. It was, well, just the titles, just the briefs that what the chapter should have. And I said it's good fill in the blanks formula way of working. And hence UX Decoded came to be. It was titled differently earlier, but then I said, no, this is the name. But truth to be told, because of that structure, it is very academia level book. Um, I find it a very hard read. It is not user friendly.
Mm.
So when I said I'm going to write, and I'm going to write the next book, which is going to be witty, it will have sarcasm, it will have, all the fun bits where you have the page turning experience. So watch out for the next one. But the day will come. But before that, another interesting point. You're running a studio practice. You are dealing with the tools and the changes that they have happened. For over the years, we are talking about the initial Adobe suites that people use to now very different level of software applications, and now we have the whole wave of AI. So, what is the workflow for you and your studio that you have adopted?
It almost sounds trite at this point, but looking at outcomes before we even think about features is really the initial way of approaching things. And I am very much a I/we, as far as my studio is concerned, very much a tool agnostic creator. And that is to say, I'm not going to come in and say, the KPI for this project is how much AI are we going to use? It's do we need it? What value can it provide? How much of it should be there? What are we trying to accomplish? So really pumping the brakes on even taking a look at like what like a client comes to us and say, we did an app, or we have to catch up on this AI thing. What do we do? And just really slowing down and taking a look at what actually has to be accomplished here and how can we align what we're doing to effective, measurable, metrics-based outcomes. So a lot of my work is coaching clients. If it's a consultant capacity, it's producing actual design work. If it's advisory capacity, it's kind of dipping in and dipping out and providing my experience and advice on what I would do based on historical things I've been a part of. And not only do I find it incredibly rewarding, I'll be very honest with you, in a market where there are mass layoffs week over week, in a market where finding design work at any level of the hierarchical structure is a challenge, it's been a way for me to take power back, very honestly, and find work that I find rewarding and work with clients that challenge me and work with industries and verticals that I'm actually enthused about. Is it hard? Absolutely. Because, being a small studio, sales and forecasting and delivery and answering emails and doing the work, and holy moly, the hats you have to wear. So again, back to the publishing question you asked me, is it rewarding? For sure. But is it a lot of different stress? When I live downtown, I have a family, I have kids in school, I have to put food on the table and keep the lights on as well. So there's a different stress, but I find it at this level of my career and how long I've been in the field to be the place I feel is the right fit.
It's running a practice. I mean, that is where somebody actually told me years ago that only accounting is something that you can give to somebody else. But but even that, I find that to be a lie, because you still are counting hours and sending the invoices and then tracking whether the
Absolutely.
payments have come. But yeah, it goes from the studio perspective that if you're selling UX, then the salesperson can't just quantify it. You have to be on the pre-sales or sales calls. You have to
Yes.
be the one to help prepare the proposal. Even a blog post going out, the marketing person can't do it. You have to be really careful about what is written on the website. And
Yes.
that is, I think, one of the most comprehensive jobs that you can have. It feels like being the director of the movie, that even though you are not the choreographer, but you need to see what the characters are dancing like, because you
Right.
need to ensure that they are in the sync and the tune of the film or the action sequences, for example.
Right. Right.
So yeah, it's a different ball game. So when you say that you are passionate about particular type of work and particular type of clients, are they big, small? What is your preference when you go out and look for a new project?
Honestly, it's been a bit of both. And the bigger clients that are on longer term retainers or engagements afford me the opportunity to go then and seek out, like I said, so one of my things is that I love to collect Japanese selvage denim, which is a very specific niche thing. And there's a culture around it and forums around it, et cetera, et cetera. So I was able to find a denim client, and we did their website. We did some marketing for them. And, the sales cycle of like finding the right fit, having the conversations, closing it was about, I don't know, 6 to 8 months. But I was able to do that because I work with a few bigger clients that have longer term engagements that, have more challenges because there's different levels of stakeholders and folks you're dealing with. But that is consistent, and some of it is almost passive income that allow me to chase the work and energized by in a different way. Things that relate to my hobbies or things I'm passionate about. And that I mentioned the coffee client as a joke before. Not a joke. I'd love to work with coffee.
But
So,
not the retiring part.
right. Yeah, exactly. Um, so, I don't pin all my hopes on just finding stuff that I specifically like, comic books, or I don't know. I'm just making stuff up. Music. That stuff is great to find, but like I said, I certainly, as a provider in the family, as an equal part provider, have to make sure I'm doing right by consistent income as well.
you say yes sometimes to clients that you know that it is going to spell doom and gloom in the years to come, but then our field is like feast or famine. But how do you prepare for it is the question, that if your coffers are full, if you have enough grain to survive the winter.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is the way things have been, and the walk is being in front of us. So tell me this. If I say that you are going to give yourself an advice about 15 years ago, 20 years ago, what would that be? And do you think that is still relevant to the younger audience today?
Boy, that's yeah. I try to look at my younger self and the decisions I've made over the course of my career, and I say this in a completely spiritually agnostic capacity. I felt the roles I've taken on that have been healthy or otherwise, I've been able to extrapolate some kind of value or gained experience. For example, if I've worked in an environment that was unhealthy culturally, and I knew I was not doing my best work, or like for a while, I was working in a company that focused on marketing around credit cards in the financial sector. And I was doing good design and UX work, but I just was not passionate about it. And then I felt my work kind of dip because I was not invested in it. So I would say, one, don't settle, which is easier said than done now when it's just getting a job is challenging. But I settled for roles and environments that were taking a mental and physical toll on me. Were taking a toll on the quality of my work because I was able to look back and say, I know I was doing my best work because I was not invested. I was just passively creating, which is unacceptable in the field we work in because people are engaging with our experiences on the subway or at home or in low bandwidth. And I feel like we have to be as connected to research and outcomes and design as humanly possible. So as much as folks are able to not settle for an environment in which their mental and physical and creative health suffers, I would say be very mindful of that. And at the same time, never lose design is certainly a profession and a job, but for me, it's a passion. And I'll say again, not to sound profound, a calling as well. I've always been hungry to grow and learn and leverage my humility as much as possible. I suffered from a big ego for sure when I was in my early 20s in design. I received some notoriety and attention to my design that I wasn't prepared to handle, and it went to my head, and my work suffered as a result. But leveraging humility as I've grown, and leveraging my expertise, but never considering myself the expert, has been imperative in my career. I don't come in and say, I'm the guy, I have all the answers. Like, I'll come in and give you my experience, but at the same time, if you can offer me something that challenges my thinking and I can grow from it, I will absolutely take that, and I will grow from that. So never stop learning, never stop being a student of your craft and discipline, I think is timeless and absolutely imperative advice.
That's wonderful advice. And that is the purpose of why I started this podcast. I mean, getting time from all the zones and the primarily coming to it. It's about learning more about what leaders are going through, what their constant push for excellence comes from. And I think it is key. You have put it beautifully in the words that never stop learning. You never know when the tech will pass, the technology will change, something new will be on the horizon. If we started, the career look very different from what they are right now. So if anybody who is looking for sustenance, know that there is always going to be another generation walking in, another creative wave that is going to come by and pass. But it is your humility and the hunger that is going to keep you in the business rather than applying for license for a food truck. So, with that, I thank you, Justin, once again for joining in our show. And the season 7 discussions have been wonderful so far, and I hope that this trend continues and we get to talk more.
Thanks, Nishint. I appreciate being a part of your podcast.
And that is the end of our episode today, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Do like, share, and subscribe, and stay tuned. We'll be back next week with another episode of the UX Banter podcast. I'm your host, Dushyant Kanungo. Bye.